everybody, and thank you for joining me. This is No Soundbites Allowed. I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. Happy to be here with you today. Sorry I didn't get to fix my video right away because I wanted to come to you live to talk about what's going on. What is happening today with we just heard the State of the Union. And I don't know. I did not find that to be the best discussion at all. I think it was pretty miserable. It was not the best State of the Union I've ever heard. And I can understand why there was such an outburst by many Republicans at several points throughout this conversation. It was incredible. I mean, absolutely incredible. You saw this. I mean, we got to hear this, and from the beginning all the way through, this was a mess. I think it was horrible. It was one of the worst State of the Unions I think I have ever heard in my life. Because as Joe Biden said when he started off this conversation, this was a story. We heard this from Jen Psaki. I believe she was on MSNBC before the State of the Union. She said, Joe Biden's going to tell America a story. See, and here's the problem. When you tell people a story, that doesn't mean you're going to tell them the truth. And that's what we got. Now, you don't have to agree with me. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to reach out to everybody and tell me, I've listened to the State of the Union. I listened to the Republican response by Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders. And I want to hear what you think. How do you feel now that you've had a chance to hear both of them speak? And how does that make you feel about our nation going forward? Do you feel safer? Do you feel like the economy's better, that you're now richer or will be richer going forward? These are the questions that we need to ask. And I want to ask tonight, I know it's 11 o'clock at night on the East Coast, but I want to ask that question now because I want to hear what your immediate impact is. Because we know that the story is going to be changed as we hear all the social media, the major news media. They're going to tell you that this was fantastic, the best thing you ever heard. People like Robert Reich are out there right now trying to convince you that this was uplifting. I don't think it was, but maybe I got it wrong. Maybe I missed something in this entire discussion. And let's go through, and I want to go through with you some of the things that I had to say about this throughout the night. I mean, there was, as you can see, or I'm going to show you right now, I had a lot of comments about this State of the Union. And there were a lot of issues I had with what Joe Biden had to say. I mean, he started off with the fact that it's story time. Story time. Which means that we're getting told a delusional, false narrative. It's a fantasy. This was the Democratic fantasy about what the State of the Union actually is. This had nothing to do with the truth of where we are as a nation. One of the big things that I found that was a big problem, and you can call in to 607-242-9247. The phone line is on and ready for your calls right now to tell me what you think. Or you can leave your comments on YouTube, on Facebook, to type in your comments and tell me what you think there. But I felt that there was no connection. This was not connected to the reality that you and I are living with the inflation that we're going through. I mean, you try and buy lettuce today. You go out and buy eggs that are up 380%. You go out and pay your bills. Tell me that you're not having to pay more for electricity, for your housing, for all the things that you buy, especially food. And yet Joe Biden's telling us that the economy's fantastic. He's telling us that we're beloved around the world and that he is helping to make the world safer. We have documented for 2 years in a row how the world has been destabilizing. That Japan and South Korea don't trust America, which is why they're building up their own armies. They are militarizing and getting nukes. This has no connection to the reality we live. He wants to talk about airline tickets, and you and I are trying to figure out how we're going to survive the next day. That we have to worry about threats. Most recently, the stupid balloon that was flying over America, that could have been an EMP, it could have been a bioweapon. They may have been taking photos of all of our strategic infrastructure. Who knows? But he wants me to think it's safer. Totally ignored the fact that crime is up 12% in 2022. That is after increasing in 2021. That is after increasing with Antifa and BLM riots throughout the nation in 2020. And he wants to tell me that you're safer today, that you're better off today. Doesn't make sense. Now, again, you may think I am wrong. And I want to hear what you have to say. Your tweets, your chats, your phone calls. I want to hear what you think about this. Because maybe I got it wrong. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there was something truly, truly wonderful throughout this conversation. Let me go back, and you can follow this on my Twitter account, and the link will be in the description so that you can see some of the things that I was talking about. But one of the things that caught my attention is one of the first things that Joe Biden had to say was talking about the burn pits. Let me ask you, do you think that the burn pits, and this is good legislation to be able to protect our soldiers, I agree, but do you think that the burn pits was the most significant law ever? Because that's what Joe Biden told you. This is the disconnect that I'm talking about. That Joe Biden said that burn pits, this legislation he passed to protect our soldiers, was the most significant ever. What about ending slavery? What about women's right to vote? You can talk to the civil rights movement as another point. There's been a lot of legislation in America in our history, and he wants you to think that the burn pits was the most important thing. In the last 2 years, was that really the most significant thing? Yes, it helped many of our soldiers, but was that the most important thing that affected your life in the last 2 years? Or did the riots in the autonomous zones, the insurrection from the left, from BLM and Antifa, did that have more an impact on your life? How many riots happened in your neighborhood, like my neighborhood? Just a week ago, we had Antifa and BLM and progressive leaders of tomorrow going out and intimidating the public, threatening them to obey their desires. And they had to get arrested in Johnson City, New York. And that's what was important in the last 2 years. The threat against individual freedom and safety, the ability to speak and to be able to have a comment. But he wants to tell you that it was the burn pits, most important thing you could have ever heard. I don't think that's true. And I don't care if you see this live or if you see this after the fact tomorrow, because I understand it's late at night. Many people are getting ready for work, but this is important. And I want to get it off my lungs. I want to get this out. And I hope someone does call in to tell me what you think, whether you agree or disagree with any of the points. But I saw so much in this speech that was just wrong. It wasn't real. He's talking about the pride of being Americans. When you listen to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, when you listen to Ilhan Omar, Cori Bush, Anna Presley, when you listen to the Squad, many of the progressives, even Hakeem Jeffries, do you feel pride? When you listen to Sheila Jackson Lee or Nancy Pelosi, when you listen to Adam Schiff, are you hearing them talk about the pride of being Americans? Or do you hear them tell us how the Constitution is flawed, that we are bad, that we have to fundamentally transform America? Who said that? Obama. That's the Democratic Party since 2008. They want to transform America. If they're so proud of America, why do they want to change it? I think that's an important question. If you're really proud of being Americans and America and the freedom that we have done, then why do you need to change it fundamentally at its core? Why do you have to change the building blocks of our nation in terms of free speech, in terms of our Second Amendment rights to defend ourselves? That seems to be an oxymoron. These two concepts don't work together. Again, if you think I'm wrong, call in. Type a message. If you're seeing this after the fact, leave me a comment in the description and tell me, Mike, you don't understand. That's not correct. Okay, prove it to me. Show it to me. Because that's not what I'm hearing. The critical race theory that we are seeing being taught to our kids in schools today isn't a reflection of the pride of America, but rather the demonization of being an American And we have to apologize because everything is evil about America. That's what Democrats are pushing every day. And this speech somehow thinks that doesn't exist anymore. So that was another point in the speech that really struck me, and I need to talk about that. How about this? Joe Biden wants to tell you that the economy is doing fantastic, that we are doing so much better, that the economy is running so much stronger. Wait a minute, we have 100 million people that are not being counted in the unemployment rolls. And that number has been increasing, the number of people not counted. That comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics themselves. We have inflation in our nation. And even though they like to tell you that it's down, you went to the store today. You know that the food you're buying is 25, 35, 45%. Hell, some items are hundreds of percent more costly today than it was in 2022, than in 2021, than in 2020. The prices have skyrocketed. Gasoline. Joe Biden wants to tell us that the price of gas is down. Nancy Pelosi retweeted, the price of gasoline is down. No, it's not. The price of gasoline compared to February 2021 is up. It's down from the peak, but it's still higher than where it was before Joe Biden was around. There's a reason why 62% of Americans before tonight agreed that America is not doing better. 40% of Americans, 4 out of 10, agree that they are not better off today than before Biden was in office. 62% believe that Joe Biden has done nothing of value. And in his speech today, he pointed out nothing of value that he has done. Even though he wants you to think that things are better, he hopes, he's telling you to feel like things are better, even though they are empirically not that way. That's important, I think. But let's go on. And again, anyone has a point about the speech that you think was important, that stuck out to you, call in, leave a comment. I want to hear what you think. But these are some of the things that stuck out to me. One of the things that stuck out to me, another thing that stuck out to me, Joe Biden wants to talk about semiconductors. America is going to be rebuilt. He's rebuilding America because of semiconductors. The roads aren't built on semiconductors. Our schools, our pipes, electricity, machinery, that's not built by semiconductors. Those are the things that we need to fix. That's the infrastructure of America. When I go to the store, mom and pop stores aren't built by semiconductors. They're built by American citizens on the goods that we need. That's not turning America into a manufacturing powerhouse. We still are dependent on China for some 40% of all of the goods that are made that we buy in America. That's not independence. But he wants to point to that because that is a little thing that he can say, well, I got that. And even that isn't a reality today. He's talked about it. We've seen the contracts being made. But as an example, I live in New York State, where Micron has said that they want to enter into a contract to come into Syracuse, New York. They're going to build a factory in upstate New York. And you know how many home run stories we have heard in just the last 3-4 years? Hemp was going to transform New York State. The drone testing site is going to transform New York State. We have been promised over and over again. Cuomo said that we were going to transform New York State because we would become the second Hollywood, the East Coast Hollywood. None of these home run stories ever work. And so promising me that it's just going to be better because they say so, that's not good enough. That's what I feel about it. And again, you may feel different. Maybe you feel safer. Maybe you feel richer now that Joe Biden told you that you're safer and richer. I don't. Let me go on. And we notice that Joe Biden, he still has not said anything about the global food shortage or the food shortage in America, the shortage of eggs, the shortage of meat. He doesn't address that because he has no plan to fix it. So if he doesn't talk about it, it doesn't exist, even though you're living through it. He doesn't want to talk about the supply chain slowdown and the fact that we're still dependent on China to build everything. He doesn't want to talk about that. He doesn't want to talk about the fact that interest rates are higher and continuing to go up. So you have more money coming out of your pocket to pay for the extra interest rates, your credit cards, your mortgages, your car loans, and yes, of course, your college loans. He doesn't want to talk about the fact that that's up and going to go higher. He doesn't want to talk about that because that would make you think of the fact that we're in a recession or stagflation. He doesn't want to address that. He wants you to think that everything's okay. And I found it very interesting because, in part, what Joe Biden was talking about was the shovel-ready jobs of the Obama administration. He literally is talking about trying to build the U.S. infrastructure just like Obama did. And you remember how well the shovel-ready jobs worked in 2010, right? You saw how well that promise of infrastructure, because Obama spent 8 years promising that he was going to fix the infrastructure of the United States. We were going to rebuild the roads and bridges. And today, we are being promised again that under Biden, we're going to rebuild the roads and bridges. They never actually come through. The shovel-ready jobs are never shovel-ready. They're never jobs that improve America. But they promise that to you all the time. And this is a promise from 2010. User has been banned says, it's more hot air than the Chinese balloon. Talks about using FedEx to stop illegal drugs. It's not coming by mail. Exactly. It makes no sense where Joe Biden he's talking about things that have nothing in connection with the average person in America. He's recirculating and revisioning the Obama era promises, the progressive promises that we're hearing from AOC and Ilhan Omar, but he's not actually providing anything of substance. Where's the substance of things that are better today? Yeah, another show. You're right. User's been banned points out. What about the shovel-ready jobs like the Keystone Pipeline that he got rid of on day one of taking office? 11,000 people instantly became unemployed. Tens of thousands of people connected to that pipeline and those workers instantly lost their jobs and businesses closed. That is the Biden legacy. But he wants to tell you that everything's okay, that it's all fine. Don't think, obey. Don't think, just agree. This is insulting. Remember, he also wanted to talk to us about high-speed internet. It's high-speed internet. The problem with America is you don't have high-speed internet. Yet again, this is in Obama era, 2009, 2010, 2011. We heard Democrats promising us we're going to have high-speed internet. I remember there was Anthony Brindisi in the New York State. He was running for Congress, and he at one point was a congressman saying, oh, yeah, I'm going to fix high-speed internet. They've been promising that for a decade. We're no closer to it than the first time Obama mentioned it. Why do they keep telling us about these failed promises as if we've never heard them before? Because they think you're dumb. They think you forgot. They think that just because they promise something, well, that's as good as doing something. And I don't think it is. We heard about Joe Biden at another point. He was talking about the drug prices and that he's lowered the price of insulin. Well, he forgot to mention that he increased the price of insulin first. Because let's go back in time, and you don't have to like President Trump or not, but the fact is President Trump had put in an executive order to lower the price of insulin and certain other drugs. That is a fact. He lowered the price and capped the price. And then the first thing that Joe Biden did, January 21st of 2021, is he removed that cap on the price of insulin and other drugs. He literally increased the price of drugs the first day he was in office. And here it is, it's now 2 years later, and now he's trying to take credit for doing what was already done. He wanted us to forget that President Trump actually lowered the price of insulin and that he reversed that, increasing the price of insulin. And now that he's lowered it again, he's the good guy. He did a good job for the American people. I'm sorry. I have a memory that's not a sieve. I know what you did. Millions of Americans, those who have insulin, they know that you didn't do this. You're taking credit for something that was already done. In fact, he made it worse for people when it was getting better for them. I'm not saying that it's not good to reduce insulin prices, but it's absolutely wrong to say, that Biden suddenly made it better for people because no one had ever thought of that. It was already done. He just didn't want Trump to get credit for it. And he wanted you to forget that that actually was happening. User has been banned says, Sega did more for broadband when they came out with the Sega TV. They helped the companies here push it out faster. Fun little tidbit on that one. I didn't know that Sega did that. Okay, that's good to know. Valiant Thor. Hello, Valiant Thor. Good to have you with us. Valiant Thor says, bringing that balloon down is Biden's way of saying he's doing something about inflation. Yeah, you're probably right. He would probably look at it that way. But it's just amazing to me, the disconnect, the constant disconnect. And I want you to remember, he said this very clearly. This was a story he was telling us. He wasn't telling us the facts. He wasn't telling us about his vision. He wasn't telling us about the consequences of his actions. He was telling us a story. He said it at the beginning of his speech, at the end of his speech, that this was a story about America, not the facts of America, not the reality of America, not the experience of America, but a story about America, because he was making this up as he went, because he's disconnected from people that much. User has been banned said that's about the only thing he deflated besides his intelligence is the balloon. Valiant Thor says one of these days, one of those classified documents is going to walk into Rick's pawn shop of Pawn Stars in Las Vegas. And that will be a very interesting episode. I think so. I think it's very interesting that Joe Biden did not reassure the American people that one of the biggest scandals, which is his classified documents, never once mentioned. He didn't reassure us that that was something he would weather the storm about. He didn't reassure us that we have finally found all of the documents that he's had and it's no longer a problem. He didn't even address or even try to attempt to reassure Americans that he had a reason to have documents since the 1970s, literally from roughly 1978 going forward, that he had classified documents for 40 years that he never should have had and never had the authority to have, as he demonized everyone else for doing that. For Trump, he demonized him. That should never happen. I've never had unsecured documents. And for 40 years, you've had documents sitting in a garage available to anybody to walk in. And if you mean, he's like, oh, my garage is so super. Your garage is not Fort Knox. Your garage is not the CIA. It's not a safe room in Congress. It's not secure. And you've had them there for 40 years. With Hunter Biden, in many of his times, having his issues with drugs, with his contracts selling and peddling influence to nations around the world, and you mean to tell me that there was never a moment that Hunter Biden, who, as he was rummaging around looking for Parmesan to sniff and snort down because he thought it was an illicit drug, that he never ran across any of those documents marked classified and said, hey, you know what? China's been asking me about what I might know. Do you think they might give me a couple $1 million for a copy of that? And you can't tell me that couldn't have happened. You may say it didn't happen, but you can't tell me it couldn't happen. You cannot assure me that Hunter Biden, who had access to everything, all these classified documents that have been sitting around Biden's house for 40 years, that he never had the opportunity to take those documents and sell them to the highest bidder around the world in his drug-fueled mindset, which means we should be concerned, which means there's a crime that needs to be punished. And whether he intended that to happen or not is meaningless according to the law. Intent is not important. It's that he committed the crime. And he reassured no one in America that that's not a problem, or that this has been resolved, or that this is ended. And it's important. So let me go back to some of the comments here. Valiant Thor says, any American who pays their own bills knows the State of the Union was crap. Valiant Thor says, at this point, I feel completely and utterly left out that I don't have any classified documents lying around my house. If we did, we'd all make a lot more money. It's incredible. But I think it's a valiant point, and I thank you for bringing it up, that this is important, that these are the things he left out of the speech that average Americans are concerned about, that the world leaders are concerned about, that they're paying attention to, that he totally just glossed on by. But what else did Joe Biden not address or address badly? And let's look through, and you can see my Twitter account to see many of these things. This is the one, this statement really, really got my attention. And you are not going to see this anywhere. I don't think anyone in the news media is going to quote this. I don't think anyone is really paid attention when he said this. It was off the cuff. And I think this is important. I doubt that this will be in the White House transcript of the speech. And so it's going to be missed by almost everyone in America. Joe Biden said, and this is at 9:34 p.m. that I typed this, so you can timestamp it and see it for yourself. He says, it's not a party position. In the speech, he's paused and said, it's not a party position, so I'm not going to exaggerate the next thing that he was saying. He said, I want to tell you something. It's not a party position, so I'm not going to exaggerate, which means that everything else he is telling us that are Democratic Party positions are exaggerations. This is important. He literally told America not only that this was a story, but that he is exaggerating when he's telling us this, that he is literally making this up, that he is blowing things out of proportion to push a partisan message. Those are his words. I said it at 9:34, right after he said it. Look back. That would have been about 30 minutes into his speech, 30 minutes into his speech. And you should remember this, because the news media is not going to quote this to you. And I think this is absolutely important. He told you to your face that he is lying. I'm very upset about that, because it's as important as when he lied to us about the 5,000 Americans that he abandoned in Afghanistan, which he didn't mention about in this speech. Here it is. We are now in 2023. Those Americans have been in Afghanistan for over a year. 5,000 Americans just thrown to the wayside, forgotten by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. That's on top of the 10,000 Americans that he also didn't mention that he threw away in February of 2022, threw them away. That's men, women, and children, American citizens in the Ukraine. He just tossed them to the wayside. He had no concern for any of them because he was too busy exaggerating the bullet points of the Democratic Party. And he thinks that you were too dumb to notice that he said that. I didn't miss it. I did catch it, which is why I brought this up. It's very important. Valiant Thor says, 1 out of 18 voices in my head says Biden is a sane individual. That's funny. That's funny. Now, if anyone wants to, again, this is open. If any of the progressives, any elected officials would like to come on and tell me, Mike, you misunderstand. Oh, hang on, I've got a comment. Hello, you're live right now. This is Michael Voss of No Soundbites Allowed. You're calling into the show. What's your first name?
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing?
It's good. Are you doing your post-State of the Union address?
Yes, I am live. You're on live.
Oh, fantastic.
By the way, folks, this is John Rastusha, good friend of mine. Go ahead, John.
Did not understand you were doing the show live, but first off, I didn't watch the State of the Union.
Okay.
Because what could we possibly talk about for accomplishments for this administration? Let's just
I was just
what
going
can
through
we?
that. I cannot name a positive impact of the Biden Harris administration to date.
It seems like a waste. Um, from what I heard, and I do want to cover this.
Hmm.
From I was reading the recaps. Biden attacked our police forces.
Yes, he threw them under a bus, said they have all kinds of problems, they're evil, they're racist, but he loves them, but we need to defund them. We have to reallocate those funds. That's what he said in the speech. Yes.
Do you think his security force should be taken away at this point, Mike? Honest to
No.
goodness, if you're
No.
going to attack someone's security, the people who guard him every single day, uh, you know,
Well, he's special.
shouldn't you lead by example
Well, no, no,
and
no.
not have the police protect you?
You got to remember, Democrats and politicians are special. They get a different classification. That's why you see Cori Bush say that the people of Minnesota don't need a police force. They need to defund the police. But she's taking $70,000 of taxpayer dollars to pay for a private security force to protect her. They're different than the rest of us.
It's so, and this kind of goes with my latest J-Rest break, which broke 900 views tonight.
Yeah.
Um, they're so disconnected from the rest of the world, right? The rest of us, I would say the average American is very pro-police because things happen. They have to call the police. They protect us. They serve and protect the actual communities in America.
Yeah.
But if you're a celebrity in Hollywood or you're a Democratic politician, you don't do that. You don't need that. You have your own private security force. You don't have to worry. So you say, why does anyone else need the police? It seems like to me that's how I've always viewed it,
Well,
and it seems more and more apparent now than ever.
I think it's absolutely apparent. Let me ask you this. This is a direct quote, and I want to share this with you. It's a direct quote from Joe Biden. He says about 20 minutes into the speech, 25 minutes into the speech, he says, I want to share this with you. It's not and I'm quoting, quote, it's not a party position, so I'm not going to exaggerate. And then he goes on. Let me ask you, when you hear the president tell you that he is exaggerating in his speech to you about the State of the Union based on partisan ideology, does that make you feel safer? Does that make you feel richer?
Say it definitely is cause for concern. It's a lot of cause for concern. And I guess my also question is, I'm curious. I'm going to be curious to see what the numbers are like for our State of the Union, and if the average American. I understand all the news stations are playing the State of the Union. Obviously, you covered it, Mike, because it's your job as a political commentator to cover such a big event. Is the average American watching the State of the Union?
I can tell
That's
you.
my question.
Well, hang on one second.
Do we have the ratings for
I
it?
have numbers.
Do we?
And according to my numbers, this is based on CNN, okay? Excuse me, C-SPAN. According to C-SPAN's YouTube page, at 8 p.m., there were 3,551 people waiting for the State of the Union to start. At 9:04, when Joe Biden started his speech, 42,666 people were listening to Joe Biden. When he finished his speech at 10:26, 118 minutes later, 39,368 people were listening to the State of the Union. There are over 350 million Americans. There are 170 million Americans of voting age at this time. 30 on C-SPAN, there was about 40,000 people paying attention to the speech at any given moment.
Right, and that, of course, that's only the YouTube video of it, correct? That's only the YouTube stream.
Yeah, that's just YouTube, and I was watching primarily on C-SPAN itself.
Right, and to be fair, I will give credit where credit's due. We don't know how many channels have been streaming it. I want to make that very clear. We don't know yet. how many channels were streaming it,
Mhm.
what their viewership was like. But I'll say this: YouTube is the biggest platform right now. I think we both can agree that is
Yeah.
the biggest platform. It's bigger than cable. It's bigger than Netflix. More people use YouTube than anything. If only 42,000 are watching on the biggest platform from the main source who is streaming this, C-SPAN, I think it's a good indicator that not many Americans are tuning into this.
I don't think almost anyone was paying attention. I think most
I,
people are
I,
already
yeah,
aware.
yeah. And to be honest, uh, as someone who does follow politics pretty intensely, I almost forgot it was the State of the Union. Nobody, I haven't, obviously I have a day-to-day job. Nobody mentioned it at all. None of the people who don't care about politics or who don't have very much interest, or I would consider the average American, didn't mention it. No one talked about watching it. No one even mentioned that that was going on.
Yeah.
And this is who I consider to be my baseline for what's going on, because we do talk about the news very casually and things, but nobody mentioned this.
Well,
It's
it's amazing to me, but let me ask you, you've been reading the responses. Has anyone quoted the quote I just gave you? The quote that I made at 9:34 p.m. tonight in the middle of the speech.
nobody has. Nobody has mentioned that because they're all focused on different things. And it seems like it, for someone who wants to claim unity, and I think back to the last State of the Union I watched where they tore up Trump's speech, right? They tore up the speech,
Yeah.
right? Where Nancy Pelosi tears it up. It, the theatrics weren't there because the Democrats, it seems, were in control of the presidency. Have you noticed that? There weren't that many theatrics this time,
Well,
if you will.
there was the moment where all the Republicans, not just Lauren Boebert, not just um,
Mhm.
MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, but the Republicans in Congress all shouted down Joe Biden when he accused them of trying to end Medicare and Social Security, which is factually a lie. It is a
Yep.
lie. He's like, well, some of you are suggesting that, won't mention any names. You don't get to go on national TV on the State of the Union and say, some of you, I won't mention your name. No, you call them out by name. If you're going to go
Yep.
there, then you mention who said that, because the Republican Party said, you are lying. They have publicly and repeatedly said that's not true. And that is the lie that is said when Democrats are attacking Republicans every single election cycle.
Mhm.
And it's
You're right.
insulting.
Well, I wouldn't even call that theatrics. That's a normal response when you are lying about your opposition party. That is a normal response when
Well, I'm
you
not
are
calling it
lying to the
theatrics.
American people.
I'm not calling it
Yeah.
theatrics. I'm saying, but it's such a blatant and absolute
Hmm.
lie and accusation. It's a threat
Hmm.
against these Republicans, and he knows there is no validity to it. So they had to speak out as unison, and he had to stop his speech to try and address the crowd, trying to say, "Oh, well, okay, so you all agree with me that Social Security and Medicare are safe." No one said it wasn't. And he's like, "See,
Yep.
we have common." No one ever disputed that, and he's like,
No.
"See, I made a
No. Yeah.
victory." No, you didn't.
No. He is absolutely, and I'm surprised he spoke for as long as he did.
No, no, it was right in line with my prediction. I literally
Was it
predicted
light in line?
my upper limit. I said he was going to be 58 minutes to 1 hour and 20 minutes. He came in at 1 hour and 18.
I predicted less. I did. Um, I predicted a few more gaffes, but uh, not saying anything about that. Just saying that he has a tendency to screw things up when he speaks.
I would just say that a B12 injection doesn't have a long-lasting effect in the human body.
No, and as you know, YouTube, to let YouTube know, there is no correlation between those two statements for YouTube censors.
Yeah.
But it's mind blowing to me that this is where we're at. And like I said, there weren't as many theatrics. When the Democrats are in control, they got to make a big scene, and they are always trying to show, oh, but no, it seemed appropriate. And to be fair, I don't. It seems like Biden won't be president for another term. It seems, from what I've been seeing, mega donors are taking a step back from Biden completely.
Well, to be fair, we have seen already, according to ABC polls, Washington Post polls,
Mm.
several polls that have come out already, Democrats don't want Joe Biden to run. Democrats,
Yeah.
forget about Republicans, forget about the independents. Democrats don't want, I think, because this speech, he is not connected to America, and his statements, his view, his vision for America is a fairy tale.
Mhm. Now, there is something I wanted to bring up with you, Mike. Speaking
Sure.
of Joe Biden, a little bit, I want to talk to you because one of the big things that's going to be going forward is the investigation into Hunter Biden, and especially after the State of the Union,
Yeah.
right?
Which he
This
didn't
is
mention.
going to happen.
Yeah.
Yes. Did you see AOC's response to the Hunter Biden investigation?
No, I saw a response to Ilhan Omar being kicked off.
Now, she came out and defended Joe Biden vehemently, saying that the Republicans were picking on someone who had a former and open addiction to drugs, and that's why he shouldn't be investigated.
If he committed a crime, it's a crime. I don't care if he was addicted to drugs or not. I don't care about the color of his skin, his religion, his sexual preference. Well, I do care about his preference towards very young individuals. We'll say that.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't care. If he committed a crime, he committed a crime. There is no excuse because of drugs.
It seems to me that now AOC is doing damage control for Joe Biden almost. It seemed, when I read that statement, it surprised me because I know they have somewhat of a rocky relationship. It seems to me, though, that maybe AOC isn't quite as progressive as she let on.
No, that's not it.
As you know,
No,
I
that's
think,
not it. That's
or
not it.
she's going in line more with getting in line with more of the Joe Biden Democrats.
No, she's going for votes. She's trying to get herself positioned for a run for the presidency, and that's middle of the road. And it fits her message that drugs are not, people who are addicted to drugs aren't responsible for their crimes.
Sure. But I think if we saw AOC a number of years ago, she would have not even had a comment about it. But this seems like a political
She
maneuver.
wasn't planning to run for president.
Yeah. No, I see this as a political maneuver. I'm not saying this isn't in line with her, but I see this more as a political maneuver that we haven't seen. And I think you're right. It's going to be lined up for her running for higher office and trying to cozy up to some of these bigger Democrats.
Absolutely.
And I think that is kind of selling out her core beliefs, or at least to her hardcore anti-establishment progressive base.
Wants to let them know that she hasn't forgotten about them.
Yeah. I think this is a step away from that, though. The Antifa crowd, who also does not like Joe Biden. Fair to say. They view all the Nancy Pelosi and others. They want more people in the squad. But it seems like it's almost her taking a step away from that and going toward Joe Biden in a way. I think it's an interesting turn, and I'm going to be...
It's a slight pivot towards the center because she needs centrist Democrats to be able to get a higher office.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of goes against her core, I want to say, tactics or core base, which is never compromise, it seems like. I'm not saying it is a compromise. I'm not calling Joe Biden a moderate. I'm just looking at it objectively. I think it shows she's more of an opportunist than she lets on.
Oh, she's absolutely an opportunist.
Yeah. And I think it was very indicative of that move. And I'm going to be watching that. And I encourage you and your audience to watch her more carefully as the months go on.
Oh, no doubt.
To see if she starts to go more towards the establishment Democrat side. Because I think that's what we're going to see. I think that's what we're going to see because you're right. She plans on doing a bigger run. But if she's supposed to be this progressive war champion, I think she's botched it. I think she's going to throw that away in a heartbeat.
Well, yeah, but I think it's completely useless. Let me do this because I do want to make sure that other people, I know it's late. It's New York State. It's 11:49 right now. I want to make sure if anyone else wants to speak before the East Coast goes to sleep.
Yep.
Was there any final thought? What I suggest, look at my Twitter, look at some of those things I've pointed out, and then listen to the comments being made by the mainstream media. I think you'll see a very different story because they're not going to give people the honest truth.
Absolutely. I think final thoughts are, like I said, I didn't watch it personally. I have no interest in watching a president who lies to the American people, who has blatantly called an entire half of the country evil. I have no interest in that. I have no interest in watching him do that. And this is, I have no interest, but I look forward to your coverage as always, Mike. I think you have the most interesting approaches as usual.
Well, we try.
I think you definitely bring up aspects that no one is talking about, because I have not heard from a single site, not from Breitbart, not from CNN, not from any of these major sites, the angle that you're discussing. And I look forward to watching the rest of the stream.
All right. Well, I thank you for that, and I hope we get a couple more calls in, as well as some of the comments we've been getting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you. All right, folks. So as you can see, you too can call in, just like John did, to hear what everyone is talking, or those who have been paying attention are saying about the State of the Union and the coverage after the fact. It seems that according to John, so far in all the coverage, no one wants to point out the quote from Joe Biden where he is admitting that he is willing to lie to the American people, that he is willing to exaggerate in the State of the Union. And I know some people will say, well, Mike, every president exaggerates during the State of the Union. Maybe that's true, but they don't tell you that. They don't admit in the middle of their speech that they are exaggerating the points, that they are literally telling you a made-up story, that they are pushing a partisan political ideology in your face, which has no connection to your daily life. You just don't see that. So even if it's something that every president has done, which I would dispute, that's not the reality that he just put forward. And no one in the news media wants to cover that. They don't want to cover the fact that to replace the electric grid, which is, again, another Obama-era idea. We're going to just change the electric grid, and everyone's going to go to electric. Where's the $7 trillion to be able to pay for that? He's putting in $100 billion, not $7 trillion. This is impossible. His math makes no sense. It is not realistic. Let me go forward. Now, Biden was talking about attacking the stock market because the stock market is evil. It's evil for the stock market to try and increase the value for shareholders. Because he said, if you remember, he said it was about 9:40 p.m., he's like, well, he wants to go after any of the companies who are buying back their stock. That's your IRA account. I want people to realize what he's saying. He wants to take away your investments. He wants to take away your IRA, your retirement account, your mutual funds that you have so that you can retire because Social Security is not going to cover it. That's what he's talking about. This is your money that he wants to strip away from you. And people say, well, corporations are greedy. So are you. That's why you're invested into the stock market. That's why your mutual funds, your retirement accounts, whether it's your company's retirement account or yours, that's the stock market. And if you're telling companies that they can't increase their stock prices, which is good for you, the investor, the person who has a retirement account, he's hurting you. People don't think of it that way. You have to think of the consequence. The consequence of what he is going to do, or what he proposed, is going to hurt your retirement. You and everyone with you, all your company, 401ks, your IRAs, he's taking away your money. Oh, but no one wants to talk about that. Don't think about that part of it. Did you notice that? Because I did. And that's important. I used to be a stockbroker. I'm very familiar with how stock buybacks work and the impact that stock buybacks have to your mutual funds, to your 401ks, your IRAs, your retirement money. And he's talking about hurting your retirement. He's taking money away from you. But he's going to say he's taking it away from the corporations, the evil, bad corporations. He's taking away your money, yours. But no one wants to talk about that. He wanted to say that President Trump added 25% to the national debt. No other president has ever done that. No, Obama doubled the national debt. In 8 years, Barack Obama doubled the national debt. That is a fact. It's not a question. It's not an opinion. It's not a guess. Did Trump add more? Yes, he did. And Biden's adding more as well. Just about as fast as Trump added it to the national debt. But Obama doubled it. No president has ever done that before. He doubled the national debt. There were 40 presidents before Barack Obama. All of their debt combined, Barack Obama doubled in his time in office. But he wants you to focus on Trump because Orange Man bad. Orange Man bad, evil, evil. Gotta remember it's Orange Man bad because this is about 2024. That's what this speech honestly is about. This speech was a campaign promotion because many of the Democrats, insiders, were talking about this is his launch pad for his campaign for 2024. Even though Democrats don't want him to run, this was supposed to convince them that he's brilliant and doing a great job and he deserves to be reelected. And that means Trump has to be evil and he has to put that in there. Hot Chicks mentions that she just got the notification now that I have been about an hour into this conversation. It's because we're suppressed on a regular basis. They don't want people talking about the State of the Union. They definitely don't want me to talk about the State of the Union and point out the lies and the misrepresentations that were just fed to the American people as if it were true. So thank you, Hot Chicks, for taking some time to be here with us. And I hope more people across the country and across the world are able to see this. And again, anyone can call in 607-242-9247. You can call in and tell me that you think I'm right, that you think I'm wrong, that you noticed something in the speech that I didn't notice. Please, I'm happy to hear your comments about this because I think this was absolutely the worst State of the Union I have ever heard. I'm about to be 55 years old. This is the worst. How about this? Obviously, as I was just talking to John, there's the fact that the entire Republican Party had to stand up, not just Lauren Boebert, not just Marjorie Taylor Greene, that I saw many people, many of the left-leaning news media wanted to make you think they were the only people objecting, that they were screaming. It was the entire Republican Party that spoke in a uniform voice saying that Joe Biden is a liar when he said that Republicans wanted to kill Medicare and Social Security. It's not true. It's not real. But they want you to think that because it makes, Republicans bad guys. But that's why they all spoke up. And I can't think of another speech by any president, not even Nixon, had the entire House speaking and saying, you're lying to the American people. Because no other president has so bald-faced lied to the American people. No one has ever made such an outrageous statement that was so untrue. But, if you're looking at CNN, MSNBC, the news media, they want you to think it was just Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene. You listen to the speech, not their edit. You go to C-SPAN like I did. You go to C-SPAN and listen to the whole thing, you'll hear the entire House speaking that he lied. How about this? Let's go forward. What else was said? Here's a question that I wanted to ask, and I don't think anyone else will ask this. Joe Biden was talking about how he was going to balance the budget, how is he going to afford all these wonderful retirements, these giveaways, making sure that everything on the wish list of progressives is going to be afforded. You know what he didn't mention? The United States defense, the national security. At no point in the speech was he telling us how he was going to secure the nation or how he was going to afford all these things he was promising people. Does that mean that Joe Biden's going to cut the U.S. defense budget? Now, this is important. If Joe Biden's going to cut the U.S. defense budget at the same time that China is building up its navy and threatening directly Taiwan, North Korea is threatening South Korea and Japan to the point that they are militarizing, that they are building up their own armies and threatening to add nukes. The world is getting more closer to World War, 3 regional wars. And Joe Biden, it sounds like, if I'm reading this speech right, and if I heard it right, at 9:45, he was saying he was going to cut the U.S. defense budget so that he could afford to give the progressives what they want. Let me ask you, does that make you feel safe? Do you feel safe with Joe Biden trying to reduce the United States defense at the same time that we have an open border, that terrorists have been caught entering with plans to try and assassinate various U.S. officials, at the same time that China is building up its military and promising that they're going to attack Taiwan, who we have a treaty with, that they are enabling, they're giving the technology of hypersonic missiles to North Korea so that North Korea can attack South Korea and Japan. Does that make you feel safe? Because it sure as hell didn't make me feel safe. And I don't think the mainstream media is going to address that to you. They're not going to bring that up to you. But I'm sure Democrats are going to come out and say, we're going to cut the defense budget because we want to get more windmills and green energy and climate change. Climate change. It's the biggest threat to the world is climate change. No, the biggest threat to the world is China trying to take over Taiwan at the same time North Korea is attacking South Korea and Japan. And the Philippines are so terrified that they are begging the Biden administration to go back into the Philippines and put in a military base. They already kicked us out. And now they want us back because they're terrified of China. That's how bad it is in the world. They want us back to have a base back there so they will be protected, they hope, because China is that big of a threat. That's why an Air Force general 2 weeks ago told us China's going to have a war somewhere around 2025, 2027. Get ready. Because Japan is, South Korea is, Philippines are, but Joe Biden, no, everything's fantastic. The world's fine. Don't worry about that. They're not going to do anything. This is what he told you in the State of the Union. I think it's insulting. And the mainstream media, they're letting him get away with it. Of course, I also highlighted at 9:46, why isn't Joe Biden talking about the 5,000 Americans that he abandoned in Afghanistan, the 10,000 Americans he abandoned in Ukraine? Why isn't the news media asking about this? They still won't talk about it. I think that's an important thing. He didn't mention it. But he wanted to tell you about the airline fees. He spent a good amount of time talking about airline fees. Let me ask you, are you more worried about the fees you get at an airline or how much you're paying for electricity? Are you more concerned about the fees at an airline or heating your house this winter? Are you more concerned about feeding your family or yourself, or are you more worried about the airline fees? Which one is the most common thing the average person in America is worried about today? Airline fees or being able to feed their family, heat their house, keep the lights on in their house? Which one do you think the average American is worried about? And by the way, 350 million people aren't getting on planes right now. 350 million people aren't trying to jump on planes and travel across the country tomorrow. That's not happening. But 350 million people are trying to keep the lights on, feed themselves, and take care of their families. His priorities are out of skew. He's out of his mind. And this was meant to distract you. This was meant to distract you because, and again, if you think I'm wrong, call into 607-242-9247. Tell me if you think I'm wrong. Leave a comment like Hot Chicks or User's Been Banned or Valiant Thor. You can tell me this. I think he's talking about the airline fees because he wants to distract you from thinking about the inflation that's in America, which he blew right past, the increase in the cost of interest rates that are affecting your credit cards, your car loans, your college loans, your mortgages. He doesn't want you to think about any of that. He wants you to think that he is doing something, that he is being effective, except he's not. I mean, yes, it is nice to lower the airline fees. Absolutely. But I'd rather not have to pay 380% more for eggs. I don't want to not have the ability to buy lettuce. I'd like to have my meat prices less than 50% higher. I'd like to have the price of gas and oil back to the price of February 2021, not where it is today, because it's higher today. My priorities aren't about the next airplane trip that I probably won't take because I can't afford a vacation. I can't afford to fly to Las Vegas or to California to have a vacation. I can't afford that. But I need to afford, and I must find a way to pay for my food and the house and the electricity. I think you do too. But it's a nice distraction to say, I'm going to fix airlines. Yeah, what about my everyday needs? What about the stuff I have to do every day? Oh, he doesn't have a fix for that. He doesn't have a solution for that. That's why he wants to tell you about airlines. And I guarantee you, you listen to the left-leaning news, you're going to look at the New York Times, you're going to look at the Huffington Post, the Daily Beast, the Daily Kos, you're going to listen to NBC, CNN. They're going to love this and say, see how great Biden's doing? He's going to take down these airlines, these evil, terrible airlines. But he's not going to do a damn thing for you in being able to survive day to day. They're going to leave out that part. And if you think I'm wrong, tell me why. If you're a Democrat or progressive, elected official, and you think I misunderstand that, call in 607-242-9247. Call in right now. Tell me to my face that I am wrong and tell me why. I'll be happy to hear that. Any Democrat that wants to call in, any progressive that wants to call in, I will listen to you and let you explain to me how I am misunderstanding what Joe Biden was doing when he was talking about airlines. I'm happy to hear that. User's Been Banned says, as Bush put it, Americans want to put food on the table for their families. You're right. And Joe Biden doesn't care. Quite honestly, Joe Biden doesn't care. If Joe Biden cared about the food, there is a 30% food shortage in the world. We have been talking about this since January of 2022. You don't have to believe me. Look at our live streams, look at our videos going all the way back to January of 2022. And I believe in every single video, we have mentioned at least once there is a global food shortage that is happening. And we have warned you about it. Joe Biden had nothing to say about that, even though it's a reality. He had nothing to say about the increased cost of food and the inflation we are all suffering under. But he wants to make you feel good about airline flights that you probably won't take. He doesn't care about you. I think it's that obvious. That's how obvious the disconnect is. And of course, Democrats had to push, and this is purely for the progressives out there. We need a living wage. This was a throwaway line, except for people who don't know. In the State of the Union, there is no throwaway line. Everything has been reviewed by a committee for its political impact. This was a statement for the progressives out there, the AOCs, the squads out there, Hakeem Jeffries, that he wanted to make them feel good, that he's going to try and put together a living wage. That is one of the biggest, most destructive lies in America. Because if you're a business owner, imagine a small mom and pop down in the corner, the local bodega that you go to. They got to pay everybody $25 an hour. They can't afford that. Where do you think that money's coming from? The average business in America makes about 5% in profit, if they make a profit. 5%. If the biggest cost is your wage, employees. if you double at $25 an hour, that's the living wage minimum that is pushed by progressives. That means they're going to double, minimally, they're going to double the wages. Do you know what that's going to do to inflation? Guess what? You don't have to imagine, because it was the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, they have 3 times looked at what would happen if you increase the minimum wage just to $15, not $25 the living wage, the $15 minimum wage. And in every single time they have done this study, it creates more poor people and it hurts people. It will cause more people to lose their jobs than it will ever help. And if you go to a living wage of $25, you're looking at an exponential increase. You're not just going to put 1 million people out of work. It's not going to increase poverty by roughly 2 to 3 million people. You're looking at roughly 10 to 20 million people instantly going into poverty because of a living wage. Vic joins us. Hello, Vic. Vic Furman says, I wonder if the Ukraine would have used the $98 billion in arms left in Afghanistan. Well, I'm sure they could have, but that's going to Russia instead, because the Taliban are selling every single weapon that Joe Biden left in Afghanistan, and they're selling it to Russia. But I want to, and thank you for pointing that out, Vic. That's a good point. You know, the things that we could, this is another failure of the Biden administration. If he did things properly, if he just, I'm not saying we couldn't leave Afghanistan, but if he didn't run away with his tail between his legs and leave every weapon in Afghanistan, then the people in the Ukraine wouldn't be getting hit as bad, and Russia wouldn't be getting those weapons. But let me go back to, again, the living wage. This is such a lie that even Bernie Sanders, an actual communist, a socialist in our government, even Bernie Sanders, who believes in a living wage, won't pay his employees $25 an hour. No one who's in the staff, none of the average workers, the regular grunt workers working for Bernie Sanders has ever received $15 an hour, let alone $25. Even the progressives can't afford it. There's leadership by example for you. That's how much of a lie and how much of a disconnect Joe Biden in this State of the Union had. Let me go forward. Here's a question for everybody, which, again, I don't think the major media is going to address. When is Joe Biden going to end the vaccine mandates? How is he going to deal? We had an experimental drug forcibly injected into tens of millions, 100 million Americans. And some Americans are having a negative result. I'm not a doctor. I'm not trying to give you medical advice. But the CDC has already said there seem to be symptoms from Pfizer's experimental drug that has been mandated into millions of Americans. Who's paying for that? How is he going to help those people that he affected? There was no comment in the State of the Union. He just said it's all, that he fixed the problem. That under Biden, COVID went away. No, the thing that happened with the pandemic is that American citizens stopped wearing masks because they didn't work. And they went back to work, even as Joe Biden was saying, no, you're mandated. The government has control. And people said, no, I have control over my own body. And we went back to life. Even though he's just now in January 2023, is Joe Biden finally saying, well, we might stop everything with the pandemic. We've been back to work. People don't talk about it. It's not a fear because it was never truly a fear. It was fear mongering. Vic mentions, Biden has failed Americans at every level. He blamed Trump for raising the deficit when a Democratic government took advantage of the pandemic relief. Well, that's true. Again, these are the things that are obvious. And I'm pointing this out because the mainstream media won't. And again, at any point, if anyone wants to comment, if you think I am wrong, call into the program. I'm happy to hear what you have to say. Absolutely. How about this? At 9:56 p.m., Biden had said that he's worried about identity fraud. His main concern, remember, again, this is Joe Biden doing something, okay? Joe Biden's doing something. He's going to take care of identity fraud because that's the biggest thing Americans are worried about. Violent crime was up 12% in 2022. Violent crime was up in 2021 and 2020. Americans are afraid and terrified of the crime in their communities. And he's talking about identity theft being the biggest threat to American citizens. Are you kidding me? Talk about a massive disconnect. This doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. People aren't worried about identity theft. They're worried about getting to and from to the store, going to school, to work. They're worried about that. He's talking about identity theft. No one. You look back in the news over the last 6 months, I don't think you will see a major news media story about identity theft. I don't think there was even one. I could be wrong. Progressives, Democrats out there, people who don't like this channel, fantastic. Here's your chance to prove me wrong. Was there a major news media story, a national story, talking about identity theft being a big issue for America? Tell me, did they cover that in a 24 or 36-hour news cycle? Was this a national headline news over the last 6 months? My answer is no. I do not recall in the last 6 months, in fact, the last year, I do not recall anyone saying that identity theft was more important than violent crime. Gangs or the overdose deaths from fentanyl and opioid drugs, no one's talking about identity theft. Everyone's talking about gang and drug violence. That's the number one issue in America. That was the issue for the 2022 midterm elections. That's the issue right now. Joe Biden's talking about identity theft. What is going on? Talk about a massive disconnect. He's nowhere near where the rest of America is in our concerns. I mean, nowhere in the same universe. He's out in left field and everyone else is going, what are you talking about? Think about it. Violent crime went up 12%. Black women are the fastest growing group of first-time gun owners in America. We have over 7.5 new gun owners in the last year and a half. 7.5 million new gun owners. There's 165 million gun owners. People are buying guns to protect themselves. And Joe Biden's saying, well, don't worry, I'm taking care of identity theft. That's not what people are worried about. Again, the State of the Union makes no sense. It's not connected to the reality. How about Joe Biden then went into talking about red flag laws? Red flag laws are the biggest threat to America. He said red flag laws. We need more red flag laws. We need a national red flag law. We need to get rid of guns. We have to have an assault weapons ban. First of all, there is no such thing as an assault weapon on a civilian. There is no civilian assault weapon. Doesn't exist. There's no assault pistols. There's no assault rifles. That is a lie. It is meant to be fear-mongering and scare you, to make you think that Rambo and RoboCop are real. They're not. It's Hollywood. 2, red flag laws since 1999 have never worked. I have talked to the state of Connecticut. I have talked to the state of Indiana, the first 2 states to have red flag laws. I have talked to New York State. I have looked at the data going back to going back since 1999. I've talked to New York State about this. Red flag laws have never worked. And if you want a more recent example that red flag laws do not work, look at California. Look at California and the Chinese guy that just went ape and started shooting people because he had a $100 fine at work because he damaged his the equipment at work, and he killed 8 people. Red flag laws do not work. Bigger example. Red flag laws do not work. Think of Darrell Brooks, the guy in Waukesha who used a car to kill people at a Christmas parade. How about the New York City subway shooter? We can point out lots of examples over and over and over again. Criminals and the deranged don't care about red flag laws. They don't care about gun control. And nothing that the ATF is doing today, nor any of the ideas, the gun control ideas being pushed by Governor Newsom, Kathy Hochul, Governor Whitmer, Joe Biden, New Jersey, it's not working. It is a lie. It is them saying that they are doing something, except they're not telling you that it doesn't work. If there's any Democrat, any elected official that would like to go out to try and convince me I'm wrong, I'd be happy to. Joe Biden said that there was a 300% decrease in the 1996 gun ban. That is a lie. University of Northeast Professor James Allen Fox already did the study, did not change the numbers. He is lying to you. It is a lie. But will they fact check him on it? Probably not. Let me go forward with the things that, and again, you can see my Twitter page, you can make comments on it, you can tell me what you think, but these are just some of the things that I have seen, and it makes no sense. Joe Biden at 10:09, almost an hour into his speech, he says that his efforts have increased the peace in the world. Again, I point to Japan, South Korea, Philippines. I look at Ukraine, Germany, the Middle East, Iran, Yemen. We can point to a lot of places in the world. Joe Biden has made the world more peaceful. No one is looking at Joe Biden as a leader. No one is looking at Joe Biden as a peacemaker. They're taking advantage of Joe Biden because he's weak, and he's made life more dangerous for America and the world. Okay, let me step away from what the State of the Union said, and let me go to something more specific about the response by Governor Sarah Huckabee. What was her name? Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the governor of Arkansas. Let me ask you this. Do you think her response was good? Hang on. My question, I just put it up to everyone there. And again, if you're seeing this after the fact, you're not seeing it live, I look forward to seeing your answers in the comments. But was the Republican response strong? And by the way, I did ask Congresswoman Claudia Tenney on Twitter. I did ask her. I did ask Congressman Mark Molinaro to come onto this program if they could live to answer questions here. Or if they would like, they can contact me afterwards, and I'll be happy to do an interview with them discussing this. But I don't think the Republican response was strong. I think Governor Huckabee, Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, she had I get what she was going for. And maybe you think I'm wrong here. I get what she was trying to do. She was trying to make a personal connection with the American people. She was trying to remind people that Republicans have strong family values and strong core values. And because of those values, well, these are the values of America, and that made our troops strong. It made our nation strong. And that's one of the great benefits of America, that our core values give us strength through every adversity. I get that's where she was going. I don't think it worked. I don't think that her personal story about going with President Trump over to Afghanistan and meeting the troops, I don't think that was a rebuttal against Joe Biden's many, many misstatements in the State of the Union, his many lies about the State of the Union. When I listen to her talk about her experience in government, and I'm listening and I'm comparing that to Joe Biden saying, well, there's rainbows and unicorns and the economy's fantastic, those two stories don't match up. It's not that I think that Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders was wrong. I don't think she was wrong. And I don't think that her message was inappropriate. She connected. She had a connection to average American citizens far more than anything Joe Biden said, but it didn't match. It wasn't an appropriate or balanced rebuttal. She needed to go after the lies that Joe Biden has just pointed out. She needed someone to go through and retweak her speech live based on what Joe Biden said. She had, I can tell, I've written speeches for people before. They weren't writing that speech last minute. This was her prepared speech, whether she wrote it herself or someone else wrote it for her. Governor Sanders of Arkansas, whoever wrote that speech, did a disservice to her, the Republican Party, in America, because there were absolutely points she should have taken on. Should have pointed out the lies that Biden, just like I've done, she should have took the time to say, this isn't true and it's not helpful. To point out that we have no leadership from Joe Biden on a domestic or international level, that he has not succeeded in anything, and the distractions he's trying to give to America, waiting days to shoot down a balloon only after it already accomplished its goal. The Chinese spy balloon accomplished its goal. It went across America taking pictures. God forbid it was an EMP. God forbid it might have carried bioweapons. That thing did everything it was supposed to do. And only after it crossed all of America and then went to the Atlantic Ocean did Joe Biden ever take action. Partially because it was a distraction for things like the classified documents that Joe Biden criminally had in his possession. But it's a point that she should have brought these things up. That Joe Biden's trying to distract us talking about airline fees. He's trying to distract us talking about identity theft when American citizens are worried about crime in their cities. They're worried about the insurrectionist autonomous zones of BLM and Antifa and the riots and the destruction that they always do whenever anything isn't exactly what they want. I mean, that happened in my community here in the southern tier of New York. The local progressive activist group came on out, Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, and they threatened people as they were going to a supermarket, a grocery store. That's violent. That's intimidation. And they did that because people weren't listening to them, because people didn't want to agree with their tactics, their aggressive, coercive tactics. It tells you something. And that's what Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders should have addressed, I think. I get it. We feel warm and fuzzy and connected to her and to President Trump and their outreach in the middle of the night going into a dangerous area, an active war zone in Afghanistan, because the troops deserve someone, high-ranking officials, to pay attention to what they needed and their concerns. I get it. And that means that, yeah, Republicans are more connected to the American people. I get that. But that's not a strong enough rebuttal against what I have talked about for over an hour, line by line. I have dozens of points in Twitter, point after point after point, that I was addressing and what Joe Biden was lying and misrepresenting and disconnected from the American people about over and over and over again, point by point throughout his speech. Many of these things that not one major news media outlet is going to ever bring up to the American people, especially him telling us that he is exaggerating. The story that he told us was an exaggeration, which I think is the most damning part of the entire speech, is when Joe Biden said, I'm not going to exaggerate this one point. The rest of the story, an exaggeration. I think Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders missed a vital and critical point in not bringing that up to the American people. I think there's a lot, maybe I'm wrong. And guys, whether you're live or after the fact, whether you want to call in to 607-242-9247, or you're going to comment after the show live in the comments, I think it was it should have been essential to point out that Joe Biden knows he was telling us a story, that he was lying to our face, that he was exaggerating and distracting us. He did that on purpose, and he knew it. But rather than bring that up, she talked about other things that really weren't that important. And I kind of find that upsetting. I'm just checking here. Yeah, there's also, I had to respond to Senator Chuck Schumer because Chuck Schumer's like, let's finish their job for the American people. You never started the job for the American people. You're doing a job for the Progressive Party, for the progressive wing of the Democrats. That's not the American people. Not that Chuck Schumer, no, he's never worked a day in his life. He's not been connected to American people. He doesn't go anywhere in public unless he's got a camera crew trying to do a photo op. You never see him talking with regular people about real things. Chuck Schumer doesn't go to the store for himself. He has no idea what real people are like. And I told him that he's delusional and that the data from the United States government itself proves that what Joe Biden was saying was a fictional story. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I need to get this off my chest. And I'm so happy that Vic and Valiant Thor user has been banned. Hot Chicks, so many people, and John called in, that people were paying attention. I know it's 12:30 at night. It's late. And many people won't see this until maybe tomorrow, maybe never. But I thought it was important to be able to say this. And I really need to get this off my chest because this was horrendous. This was horrendous. This was insulting to the American people. Literally the worst State of the Union in the 55 years of my life. The most blatant and obvious lie and distraction from what the average American believes and needs. And they just didn't care. And now Joe Biden's going to try and turn this around and say, and he deserves to be reelected. I don't know how he's going to make that connection. I don't know where he gets that idea from. These are some of the major things that are hitting me. This is how I felt. Let me ask you, how do you feel? Do you think I'm right? Do you think that I pointed out things that no other news media are pointing out? Do you think it's important? Do you feel, like I do, that one of the most important things and the most honest and revealing things, not just the distraction about the airlines, not just the distraction about identity theft, that complete disconnect from the American people, not even about hurting the IRAs and 401ks and attacking the stock market. No. I truly believe that the comment by Joe Biden at 9:34 p.m. when he said, it's not a party position, so I'm not going to exaggerate, telling us that the rest of the story that he was telling us was a partisan exaggeration. I think that really, really should be something that the press secretary, Joe Biden, the Democrats, whether it's Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, Adam Schiff, AOC, they all need to be asked. Why is he exaggerating when he's supposed to be telling us about the State of the Union? Why is he giving us a partisan fluff story? I just had to get that out. I just had to say that. I had to say that. I don't know. Maybe, and I look forward to seeing the comments throughout the night and tomorrow. And, as a bonus for anyone who's stuck around towards the end here, assuming that no one decides to call in these last few minutes, again, it's 607-242-9247. Whether anyone, whether an elected official or anyone else, I'm happy to hear your points of view, even if you disagree with me. But as a bonus, I want people to know that I'm going to be doing an interview tomorrow. I'm taping an interview about a book, which is the American Gulag Chronicles. I think this is very important. It's about the J6 prisoners and the experiences that they've been having. I don't think there's a lot of people talking about that, about the prisoners and what they have experienced and how this has changed the American legal system. And I'll be publishing that shortly. I'll be taping that tomorrow afternoon, and I'll have it out to you shortly thereafter. So expect a J6 story about the American, let me write the book. It's the American Gulag Chronicles. So there's a little bonus for those of you who stayed to the end. You know that this is going to be coming up shortly. Okay, it's 12:30. I know the East Coast has gone to sleep. Some people on the West Coast are maybe up talking about this. People around the world, I know people in the United Kingdom, India, various places, they're asleep or they're just starting their day. I look forward to hearing from you, whether you agree or you disagree. If you saw something else that I missed, was there something I didn't talk about? Was there an issue that really made you very happy or made you very angry about what Joe Biden said in the State of the Union? Is there anything that Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders said that made you very happy or made you very angry? I want to hear what you think from anywhere in the world. How did this affect you? And how does this affect the way you're looking at America going forward? Is it more positive or is it more negative? I want to hear your voice. And I hope that you will join us every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You know, the biggest thing we ask for is like, share, subscribe, share this voice. Let more people see some of the things that we've talked about, things that you will not hear in any other news media in the rest of the nation. Let's reach more people. Please just subscribe and help us reach out more people. It costs you nothing, but it means the world. I hope you'll consider that, and I hope you'll join us every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when we speak to you live about all the issues that affect you and the world. I thank you, and I hope you're going to have a great night, folks.